The morning sun was just beginning to peek over the eastern fields when Joseph Caldwell stepped out of his farmhouse. At 58 years old, he had followed the same morning routine for nearly 3 decades. Coffee at 5 a.m., boots on by 5:15, and a walk around his property to start the day. His weathered hands pulled his jacket tighter as he breathed in the cool autumn air. Joseph's farm sat on the outskirts of Millfield, a small town where everyone knew everyone. His 40 acres had been in the family for generations, growing corn and raising a modest number of cattle. Since his wife Martha passed 5 years ago, the land had become both his livelihood and his companion. That morning, Joseph decided to check the eastern fence line where he'd spotted coyotes earlier in the week. The path took him past an ancient oak tree that had stood longer than the farmhouse itself. As he approached, something unusual caught his attention, a sound that didn't belong among the familiar farm noises. At first, he thought it might be an injured animal, but as he drew closer, the sound became clearer. It was the unmistakable cry of a baby. "Hello!" Joseph called out, his pace quickening. "Is someone there?" When he reached the oak tree, Joseph froze. There, nestled between two large roots, sat a handcrafted wooden basket. Inside were 3 tiny infants wrapped in identical blue blankets, their faces scrunched up as they cried. "Good Lord," he whispered, kneeling down despite his creaky knees. The babies couldn't have been more than a few days old. Each had a tuft of dark hair and tiny fists that punched at the air. Beside the basket sat a sealed envelope with no name or address. Joseph's hands trembled as he checked the babies. They seemed healthy, though their cries indicated they were hungry. He looked around the empty field, searching for any sign of whoever had left them. "Hello," he shouted, his voice echoing across the empty fields. "Is anyone there?" Only silence answered him. Pulling out his cell phone, Joseph dialed 911, his eyes never leaving the infants. "Emergency services. What's your emergency?" came the operator's voice. "This is Joseph Caldwell from Caldwell Farm on Route 16, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I found 3 babies abandoned under an oak tree on my property. They look newly born. I need help right away." While waiting for help to arrive, Joseph carefully picked up the envelope. Inside was a simple note written in neat handwriting. "Please protect them. They are special." No name, no explanation, nothing to indicate who had left 3 newborns on his land or why. Joseph sat down beside the basket, removing his jacket to provide extra warmth for the babies. He spoke softly to them, the way he used to speak to his own children decades ago. "It's going to be okay, little ones. Help is coming." Within 15 minutes, sirens wailed in the distance. Soon, the quiet farm was filled with police cars, an ambulance, and concerned officers asking questions Joseph couldn't answer. As paramedics carefully transferred the infants to the ambulance, Officer Sarah Martinez approached Joseph. "Mr. Caldwell, do you have any idea who might have left these babies here?" Joseph shook his head, watching as the tiny infants were placed on stretchers. "No idea at all. My farm is pretty isolated. Someone must have chosen it on purpose." Before the ambulance doors closed, Joseph felt a strange sensation in his chest, a pull toward these abandoned children that he couldn't explain. Little did he know, this unusual morning would change not only his life but the entire town of Millfield forever. The small waiting room at Millfield Memorial Hospital had never felt so crowded. Joseph sat uncomfortably in a plastic chair, his farm boots leaving dirt marks on the clean floor. Every few minutes, nurses hurried past, their shoes squeaking against the tiles. Detective Sarah Martinez sat across from him, her notebook open and pen ready. At 35, she had been Millfield's lead detective for only 8 months. This case would be the biggest of her career so far. "Mr. Caldwell, let's go through everything one more time," she said, pushing her dark hair behind her ears. "You found the babies at approximately 5:30 this morning?" Joseph nodded, twisting his worn cap in his hands. "Yes, ma'am. I do my morning walk at the same time every day. Anyone watching my farm would know that." "And you saw no vehicles? No footprints? Nothing unusual besides the babies themselves?" "Nothing," Joseph replied. "Whoever left them knew what they were doing. They wanted those babies found, but they didn't want to be found themselves." The hospital doors swished open as Sheriff Tom Bradley entered. His heavy boots echoed as he approached them. "We finished searching the area around the oak tree," he announced. No footprints except yours, Joseph. The ground was dry. We found tire marks on the dirt road about a quarter-mile from where the babies were found, but it could be from anyone. Detective Martinez frowned. What about the basket? Any fingerprints? None so far, said the sheriff. It looks handmade, but it's common enough. Could have been purchased at any craft fair in the county. A doctor in a white coat approached the group. Dr. Emily Chen had been the one to first examine the infants upon arrival. I have some information about the babies, she said, her voice low. All three are girls. They appear to be identical triplets, approximately 3 days old. They're healthy but slightly underweight, which is common with multiples. Any signs of who the mother might be? Detective Martinez asked. Dr. Chen shook her head. No identification marks or anything unusual. They've been well cared for in their short lives. Clean, properly fed until recently, no signs of abuse. Whoever had them before they were left knew how to care for newborns. Joseph cleared his throat. What about the note? They are special. What does that mean? Detective Martinez tapped her pen against her notebook. It could mean anything. Some religious significance, perhaps. Or maybe they have a rare blood type or genetic trait. Or the parents just thought they were special, like all parents do, added Sheriff Bradley. Dr. Chen's pager beeped. I need to get back to them. We've taken DNA samples. Maybe we can find a match in the system. As she walked away, Joseph stood up. Can I see them? The question surprised even himself. Detective Martinez raised an eyebrow. Why? I found them. I want to know they're okay. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. A nurse led Joseph down a hallway to a special care nursery. Through a glass window, you could see 3 tiny bundles in hospital bassinets, each wearing a pink cap. We've named them temporarily, the nurse explained. Baby A, Baby B, and Baby C. Joseph placed his hand against the glass. Something about these helpless little girls touched his heart in a way he couldn't explain. Meanwhile, back in the waiting room, Detective Martinez's phone rang. The lab had preliminary results from the letter. The paper is common, the technician reported. But we found something interesting. There's a small symbol in the corner, a triangle with a star inside. We're checking if it matches any known groups. As news of the abandoned triplets spread through Millfield, theories began to emerge. Some whispered about desperate teenage mothers, others about religious cults. By nightfall, the story had reached neighboring towns, and by morning, it would make state news. No one in sleepy Millfield realized that the discovery on Joseph Caldwell's farm was just the beginning of a mystery that would change their town forever. By noon the next day, Joseph could barely recognize his own farm. News vans lined his gravel driveway, their satellite dishes pointed skyward like strange metal flowers. Reporters in bright-colored blazers stood on his property, speaking into cameras with serious expressions. His phone rang constantly with calls from newspapers, television shows, and people claiming to know something about the babies. Mr. Caldwell, can we get a statement? Shouted a woman holding a microphone with the Channel 7 logo. Did you see who abandoned the triplets? Called another. Joseph pulled his curtains closed and sank into his worn armchair. He had never wanted attention. His quiet life had been turned upside down in less than 24 hours. The knock at his back door made him jump. He relaxed when he saw Detective Martinez through the window. Sorry to use the back entrance, she said when he let her in. The media circus out front is something else. Tell me about it. Joseph sighed, putting on a fresh pot of coffee. I can't even check on my cattle without someone shoving a camera in my face. Detective Martinez spread some papers on his kitchen table. The DNA tests confirmed they're identical triplets. The hospital estimates they're about 3 days old. We've checked local hospitals within a 100-mile radius. No record of triplets being born recently. So the mother gave birth somewhere else? Or without medical help? Joseph asked, pouring coffee into 2 chipped mugs. Possibly. We're checking midwives and home birth records, but nothing so far. She hesitated. There's something else. The symbol on the letter matches one used by a group called the Children of the New Dawn. They're a small religious community that settled about 50 miles north of here 2 years ago. Joseph frowned. I've never heard of them. They keep to themselves. Grow their own food, make their own clothes. Not illegal, just private. She sipped her coffee. We're sending officers to talk to them today. The television in the corner, which Joseph had muted, suddenly showed his own farmhouse. The caption read, "Triplets abandoned. Miracle or mystery." "Turn that up," Detective Martinez said. The reporter on screen stood at the end of Joseph's driveway. Sources tell us the triplets are now in the care of Helen Santos, a retired nurse who frequently fosters children in emergency situations. Child Services made this decision late last night. Meanwhile, internet sleuths are already developing theories about why these 3 baby girls were left on Mr. Caldwell's farm specifically. Joseph turned off the TV. "They make it sound like I was targeted, like someone chose me." "Were you?" Martinez asked directly. "Any connection to young women who might have been pregnant? Any religious affiliations that might attract this kind of situation?" Joseph shook his head firmly. "I'm a widower who goes to the Methodist church twice a month and hasn't dated since my wife died. There's nothing special about me or my land." As they spoke, Joseph's phone rang again. The caller ID showed Memorial Hospital. "Mr. Caldwell, this is Helen Santos. I'm caring for the triplets temporarily." Her voice was warm and grandmotherly. "I thought you might want to know they're doing well. They're good eaters." "Thank you for calling," Joseph said, surprisingly moved by this news. "I understand you found them," Helen continued. "If you'd like to visit them, you're welcome to. Sometimes it helps to see they're okay." After hanging up, Joseph was quiet for a moment. "I think I'd like to see them," he told Martinez. She nodded. "I'll drive you. The back roads should help us avoid the reporters." As they slipped out through Joseph's barn to the detective's unmarked car, neither of them noticed the drone hovering high above the farm, its camera capturing their escape. By evening, Joseph's face would be on every news channel in the state, and the mystery of the triplets would capture the nation's attention. The simple farmer who had lived an invisible life was now at the center of a story everyone wanted to tell, whether he liked it or not. 3 weeks passed since the discovery that changed Millfield forever. The media trucks had finally begun to thin out, though reporters still called Joseph's landline daily. The investigation had hit a wall. Despite interviews with everyone at the Children of the New Dawn community, Detective Martinez found no direct connection to the abandoned triplets. Joseph sat in the small conference room at the county's Child Protective Services office. The walls were a pale green, decorated with children's drawings in plastic frames. Across from him sat Ms. Pamela Wilson, a stern woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose. "Mr. Caldwell, thank you for coming in today," she said, organizing the papers before her. "As you know, we need to make permanent arrangements for the triplets. Mrs. Santos can only provide emergency foster care." Joseph nodded. He had visited the babies 7 times in the past 3 weeks. Each time, he told himself it would be the last visit. Each time, he found himself returning. "We've located no relatives," Ms. Wilson continued. "We've received several applications from families willing to adopt the girls." "All 3 together?" Joseph asked. Ms. Wilson hesitated. "Well, no. Finding a home for triplets is challenging. Most families feel equipped to handle 1 baby, maybe 2. Separating them gives each child the best chance at placement." Joseph's hands tightened on the armrests of his chair. The thought of the sisters being separated bothered him more than he expected. "Mrs. Santos mentioned you've been visiting regularly," Ms. Wilson said, watching him carefully. "Just to check on them," Joseph explained. "I found them after all." Ms. Wilson removed her glasses. "Mr. Caldwell, I've worked in child services for 23 years. I recognize attachment when I see it." Joseph looked down at his calloused hands. He hadn't planned to say what came next. "What if I took them?" Ms. Wilson's eyebrows shot up. "You ought to adopt triplet girls. At your age, as a single father." Put like that, it sounded ridiculous. Joseph was 58 years old. His own children were grown and lived in different states. His farmhouse had empty rooms, but they had been empty for years. "Not adopt, necessarily. Foster them, at least until you find a family that will take all 3. Ms. Wilson studied him. "Mr. Caldwell, fostering 3 infants is extraordinarily demanding. The sleepless nights, the expenses, the complete change to your lifestyle." "I raised 2 children already," Joseph interrupted. "I have room in my home. My farm provides steady income, and," he paused, searching for words. I feel responsible for them somehow. The meeting lasted another hour. Ms. Wilson explained the requirements: home inspections, background checks, parenting classes, safety modifications to his house. Joseph listened and nodded, feeling both terrified and strangely certain. When Joseph finally left the CPS office, the afternoon sun was bright. He sat in his truck for a long moment before starting the engine. What was he thinking? His peaceful life would be gone. His quiet mornings, his simple routines. All would be sacrificed for 3 babies he'd found by chance. As he drove home, he passed Mrs. Santos's small house. Without planning to, he pulled into her driveway. "Joseph," she greeted him warmly. "Come in, the girls just woke from their nap." Inside, the 3 identical faces looked up at him from their playmat. They had grown in 3 weeks, their features more defined. One reached out tiny fingers toward him. "That's Faith," Mrs. Santos said. "She's the curious one. Hope is the loud one, and Grace is the observer." Joseph knelt down beside them. "You named them?" "Just informally," she explained. "They needed something besides baby A, B, and C." As Joseph gently picked up Faith, who gurgled happily in his arms, he knew his decision was already made. The news spread through Millfield by nightfall. The town's reaction was immediate and divided. Some called it a beautiful act of kindness. Others whispered that Joseph was too old, too male, too unprepared. No one, however, could deny the story was extraordinary. Joseph Caldwell, the quiet farmer who kept to himself, was about to become the foster father of the 3 most famous babies in the county. 6 months passed quickly. Where Joseph's farmhouse had once been a place of quiet routine, it now bustled with activity at all hours. The spare bedroom that had collected dust for years was now a nursery painted soft yellow with 3 white cribs arranged in a semicircle. The living room floor, once bare hardwood, now featured a colorful play mat covered with toys. Baby gates blocked off the kitchen and stairs. "Faith, no," Joseph said gently, moving the curious baby away from the electrical cords for the 10th time that morning. At 9 months old, all 3 girls were crawling with remarkable speed and determination. Hope, true to her name, sat banging happily on a toy drum, while Grace watched everything with her thoughtful eyes. Though identical in appearance, their personalities had emerged clearly. Faith was the explorer, always first to try something new. Hope was loud and expressive, making her feelings known to everyone. Grace was quieter, observing everything before making her move. The doorbell rang, and Joseph scooped up Faith before answering. Mrs. Tompkins from next door stood with a casserole dish. "Thought you might need some dinner," she said, peering around him to see the babies. "How are the little angels today?" "Growing faster than weeds," Joseph replied with a tired smile. "Thank you for the food." When Joseph had first brought the triplets home, many townspeople had been skeptical. Some had even been openly critical, questioning whether a man his age could handle 3 infants alone. But as weeks passed, the community gradually changed their minds. It started with Mrs. Tompkins bringing meals. Then Mr. Rivera from the hardware store helped install safety features throughout the house. Soon, a rotation of volunteers, mostly retired teachers and empty nesters, offered to help for a few hours each week. Joseph accepted their assistance gratefully, though he insisted on handling the night shifts himself. In the kitchen, now equipped with 3 high chairs, Joseph warmed bottles while talking to Elena, the part-time nanny he had hired to help during the day. A college student studying early childhood education, Elena had proven invaluable. "They're developing right on schedule," she reported, checking off items in her notebook. "Grace is actually advanced in fine motor skills. I noticed she can already pick up the small cereal pieces." Joseph nodded, feeling a surprising burst of pride. "She gets that from watching her sisters try first." The farm itself had changed too. Joseph had sold half his cattle to reduce his workload and converted one of the barns into an indoor play area for when the girls grew older. His grown son Michael had visited from Arizona, initially skeptical but leaving impressed with his father's new life. "I hardly recognize the place," Michael had said. "Or you, Dad? You seem younger somehow." It was true. Despite the sleepless nights and constant demands, Joseph felt more alive than he had in years. The emptiness that had settled over him since Martha's death had been filled with baby laughter, cries, and the thousand daily challenges of raising triplets. That afternoon, while the girls napped, Joseph sat at his kitchen table with Detective Martinez, who still visited regularly. The case remained open but inactive. 6 months and still no leads, she said, flipping through her notes. It's like the mother vanished. The children of the New Dawn community checks out clean. No pregnant women there during the right time frame. Joseph glanced at the baby monitor. Maybe it's better this way. The girls are settled now. Are you? Martinez asked. Settled, I mean? This isn't exactly the retirement most farmers envision. Joseph looked around his transformed home, at the bottles drying on the counter, the laundry basket overflowing with tiny clothes, the calendar on the wall marked with doctor appointments and developmental milestones. I wouldn't go back to my old life if I could, he admitted. Those girls, they saved me as much as I saved them. Outside, the farm that had once grown only corn now sprouted something entirely different. A family that no one, especially Joseph himself, could have ever predicted. Joseph stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching as Faith, Hope, and Grace slept peacefully in their cribs. Tomorrow they would celebrate their first birthday. He had ordered a small cake from the bakery in town and invited the handful of people who had become essential to their unusual family. Mrs. Santos, Elena the nanny, Detective Martinez, and a few neighbors who had been especially supportive. The sound of his ringing phone broke the peaceful moment. Joseph hurried to answer it before the noise woke the girls. Joseph Caldwell speaking, he whispered, stepping into the hallway. Mr. Caldwell, it's Detective Martinez. Her voice had an urgency he hadn't heard in months. We need to talk. I found something important about the girls. 30 minutes later, her police cruiser pulled up the driveway. Joseph had called Mrs. Tompkins to sit with the sleeping babies so he and the detective could speak privately in the kitchen. I received an anonymous tip yesterday, Martinez explained, placing a manila folder on the table. Someone left a note at the station with a name, the Lace Warren. Joseph's hands tightened around his coffee mug. Who is she? A 19-year-old college student who disappeared from State University 11 months ago. Martinez opened the folder to reveal a photograph of a pretty young woman with dark hair and a bright smile. Her roommate reported her missing, but then received a text saying Elise had decided to take a gap year to find herself. The case was marked low priority. And you think she's connected to the triplets? Martinez nodded. The tip included details only someone close to the case would know. It led us to a remote cabin about 40 miles north of here. We found evidence of a makeshift medical facility. And, she paused, we found records. Birth records, with Elise's name, and death records. Joseph's stomach dropped. She died? During childbirth, it appears. The records show she delivered identical triplet girls but suffered complications. Without proper medical care, she couldn't be saved. Joseph sat back, trying to process this information. So the girls are orphans. But who was running this facility? Who brought them to my farm? Martinez pulled out another document. That's where it gets even more complicated. The cabin belongs to a man named Thomas Reed. He was once a doctor before losing his license for promoting unproven treatments. He's been connected to a group that broke off from the Children of the New Dawn, a more extreme faction that believes certain children are born with healing powers. Healing powers? Joseph repeated in disbelief. According to their beliefs, identical multiples are especially powerful. They think these children can cure diseases through touch or proximity. Martinez's expression showed what she thought of this idea. The note you found with the girls, they are special. It fits their terminology. Joseph remembered the basket, the blue blankets, the carefully written note. So after Elise died, they kept the babies for a while, but then left them on my farm. Why here? Why me? We're still working on that connection, Martinez admitted. But we've identified other pregnant women who may have been taken to this facility. We're organizing a search operation tonight. As Detective Martinez left with promises to update him, Joseph returned to the nursery. The girls still slept soundly, unaware that the mystery of their origin was finally unraveling. He gently touched each of their cheeks, thinking of their mother, a young woman who never got to see her beautiful daughters grow. Mrs. Tompkins appeared in the doorway. Everything okay? She whispered. Joseph shook his head slightly. They found the girl's mother. She died having them. They were born in some kind of underground facility run by people who thought the triplets had special powers. Mrs. Tompkins's hand flew to her mouth. Those poor babies. That poor girl. As the reality of the situation sank in, Joseph realized the case wasn't closed. It was just beginning. If Elise Warren had family somewhere, they might have rights to the children he now thought of as his own. The group that had hidden her might still believe the girls were somehow magical. For the first time since bringing the triplets home, Joseph felt afraid for their future and his place in it. The courthouse in the county seat was an imposing building of red brick and white columns. Joseph had driven past it hundreds of times, but had never had reason to enter until today. Now, dressed in his only suit, slightly too tight around the middle, he climbed the steps with a heavy heart. Remember, stay calm no matter what happens in there, his lawyer, Patricia Morgan, advised as they approached the doors. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s whom Joseph had hired with his savings. First impressions matter a great deal in family court. Inside the courtroom, Joseph took his seat at one table. Across the aisle sat a couple in their early 60s, Robert and Linda Warren, Eliza's parents and the triplets' biological grandparents. They had come forward after the news about their daughter broke, devastated by her death and shocked to learn they had grandchildren. Behind them sat Thomas Reed, the former doctor who had run the birthing center. He had been arrested 3 weeks ago but was out on bail, facing charges related to practicing medicine without a license. His presence made Joseph's skin crawl. Judge Harriet Wilson entered, and everyone stood. "Be seated," she said. "We're here to determine custody arrangements for Faith, Hope, and Grace Caldwell, also known as the Warren triplets." For the next hour, attorneys presented their cases. Patricia explained how Joseph had cared for the girls for nearly a year, creating a stable home and forming strong attachments. The Warrens' lawyer emphasized blood ties, arguing the girls belonged with their biological family. Then came the testimonies. Child welfare experts spoke about the importance of stability for children under 2. The Warrens described their comfortable home in a good school district and their desire to honor their daughter's memory by raising her children. When Joseph's turn came, he spoke from the heart. "Your Honor, I never planned to be a father again at my age. When I found those 3 little girls under the oak tree, I just wanted to make sure they were safe. But something happened over these months. They became my daughters in every way that matters." His voice cracked slightly. "I know the Warrens have a biological claim that I can't match. But Faith, Hope, and Grace know me as their father. They reach for me when they're scared. They fall asleep on my chest. They laugh when I sing to them, even though I can't carry a tune." A few people in the courtroom chuckled softly. "I'm not perfect," Joseph continued. "My house isn't fancy, and I don't have a college fund set up yet. But I love those girls with everything I have, and I believe separating them from the only home they've known would harm them." The judge listened carefully, then addressed the courtroom. "This is not a simple case. We have biological grandparents with a legitimate claim versus a foster parent who has provided exemplary care during a critical developmental period. I'm ordering a home study for both households and appointing the guardian ad litem to represent the children's interests. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks." Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and microphones. Joseph tried to slip past them but was quickly surrounded. "Mr. Caldwell, how do you feel about the Warrens' claim? Will you continue fighting for custody? Do you believe the triplets really have healing powers as the cult claimed?" Patricia pulled him through the crowd toward his truck. "No comments today," she repeated firmly. As they drove back to the farm, Joseph's phone rang. It was Mrs. Santos. "The girls are fine," she said before he could ask. "But there's something you should know. While you were in court, a woman came by your house. She said she was from the Children of the New Dawn, and that she just wanted to see the special children. I didn't let her in, of course." Joseph's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Did she leave a name?" "No, but she left a symbol drawn on a piece of paper, a triangle with a star inside." That night, after checking the locks twice, Joseph sat between the 3 cribs, watching his daughters sleep. The custody battle was just beginning, but he was already fighting on multiple fronts. Against the Warrens in court, against the media in public, and now against the mysterious group that still believed the triplets were somehow magical. For the first time, Joseph wondered if he might lose everything. The courtroom was packed on the final day of the hearing. 2 weeks had stretched into 3 months of evaluations, testimonies, and legal arguments. Joseph sat at his table, exhausted but determined. The past months had been the hardest of his life, balancing the needs of 3 growing toddlers while fighting to keep them. Judge Wilson entered the courtroom, her face giving no hint of her decision. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, I am prepared to rule on the matter of custody for Faith, Hope, and Grace. The room fell silent. Joseph could hear his own heartbeat. Across the aisle, the Warrens held hands tightly. This case presents unusual circumstances that our family court system rarely encounters, the judge began. On one side, we have biological grandparents who have lost their daughter tragically and wish to raise her children. On the other, we have a man with no biological connection who has become, in every practical sense, these children's father. Joseph closed his eyes briefly, preparing himself for whatever came next. The guardian ad litem has reported that the children are deeply bonded to Mr. Caldwell. The home study found his farm to be a loving, appropriate environment. The children are thriving under his care. She turned to the Warrens. However, the court also recognizes the importance of biological family connections and the sincere desire of the Warrens to know their grandchildren. Judge Wilson adjusted her glasses. Therefore, I am ordering a solution that serves the best interests of Faith, Hope, and Grace. Primary physical custody will remain with Joseph Caldwell. Joseph's breath caught in his throat. Patricia squeezed his arm in support. The Warrens will receive liberal visitation rights, beginning with supervised visits and progressing to overnight stays as the children adjust. Both parties will share legal custody, making major decisions together regarding the children's education, health care, and religious upbringing. After setting a detailed visitation schedule, the judge addressed one final matter. Regarding the petition from the Children of the New Dawn for visitation rights based on religious interest, this is firmly denied. Furthermore, I am issuing a restraining order prohibiting any member of this group from approaching the children. The gavel came down with finality. Court adjourned. The following Sunday afternoon, Joseph watched nervously as the Warrens' car pulled up his driveway for their first official visit. The past week had been a whirlwind of emotions, relief that he could keep the girls, anxiety about sharing them, and determination to make this unusual arrangement work. Linda Warren stepped out first, carrying 3 identical teddy bears. Robert followed with a photo album under his arm. "Welcome," Joseph said, opening the door wider. "The girls are in the living room." The meeting was awkward at first. The toddlers, now 15 months old, clung to Joseph's legs, eyeing the strangers cautiously. But Grace was the first to approach when Linda sat on the floor and softly began to sing, the same lullaby. Joseph realized with a pang that Elise must have heard as a child. Hope soon joined her sister, drawn by the teddy bears, and Faith eventually followed, never one to miss out on an adventure. As the afternoon progressed, something unexpected happened. Watching the Warrens gently interact with the girls, Joseph saw echoes of Elise in their mannerisms. The way Linda tilted her head when listening, the sound of Robert's laugh. These were pieces of the girl's history he could never provide. She would have been a wonderful mother, Linda said quietly as the girls napped later. She showed Joseph the photo album, pictures of Elise growing up, playing sports, graduating high school. "We want them to know her, even though she can't be here." Joseph nodded. "I want that too." 5 years passed. The farm that once housed only a lonely widower now bustled with life. The triplets grew into bright, energetic kindergartners who spent weekdays with Joseph and many weekends with their grandparents. The arrangement that had seemed impossible became their normal. The story that had shocked everyone, of abandoned babies, mysterious cults, and unexpected fatherhood, gradually faded from headlines. But in Millfield, people still marveled at how 3 tiny girls left under an oak tree had created a family that no one could have imagined, proving that sometimes the most extraordinary families are the ones we choose.